So here's what the financial world is not telling you. Canada just broke a record that nobody in Washington wants to talk about. In February, Canadian exports to countries outside the United States hit $22.3 billion. That is the highest number ever recorded. Not in a decade, not in a generation, ever.
And here is what makes that even more remarkable. A Danish company, Pandora, one of the most recognized jewelry brands in the world, had a shipment headed for the United States. They diverted it. They chose Canada instead. A European business making a real-time decision looked at both countries and quietly chose stability over chaos.
And that's not a coincidence either. That is a signal. And today, we're going to explain exactly why that signal is happening, what the American data actually shows, and why the window Canada has right now is wide open, but it won't stay open forever.
So let's start with the headline that is not making the front page of any paper I've seen. America keeps saying it has the strongest labor market in the world. The White House says it, business media repeats it, and most people, well, they just accept it.
But when you look at the actual numbers, not the talking points, the real data, something very different is happening. The U.S. labor market is not charging ahead, it's freezing in place.
In February, U.S. job openings fell to 6.882 million. Hires, actual people starting new jobs, well, that dropped to 4.849 million. And the hires rate, the pace at which companies are actually bringing on new workers, well, that fell to 3.1%.
And that's not just a soft number. That matches the rate we saw during the 2008 financial crisis, when banks were collapsing and millions of people lost their homes, when credit froze and the entire global economy shuttered.
The U.S. is not in a financial crisis of that magnitude right now. There are no bank runs, no government bailouts on that scale, and yet the pace of hiring has collapsed to the same level it hit when the entire global economy was shut down by force.
And that is extraordinary, and almost nobody is talking about it.
Now, here's the number that really tells the story. The quits rate. The share of workers voluntarily leaving their jobs was 1.9% in February.
So when workers quit, it means they're confident. They believe that they can find something better, a higher salary, a step up. They're willing to take the risk. A high quits rate is actually a sign of a healthy labor market. It means people have options and they know it.
So think about your own working years. If you were unhappy at a job but worried about making your mortgage payment, worried about your kids, your pension, your stability, well, you stayed put. You didn't take any risks and you hunkered down.
And that's exactly what 160 million American workers are doing right now. They're hunkering down. At 1.9%, the quits rate is telling us those workers do not believe something better is waiting for them. They're scared to move. And a workforce that is scared to move is not a sign of strength. It's a sign of fear dressed up as stability.
And job growth is confirming it. Through the first quarter of 2026, the United States was adding only about 30,000 new jobs per month. Whoa. For a country of 340 million people, that is almost nothing.
Now, I know some people will say, hey, why should I care about U.S. hiring numbers?
Well, here's why it matters directly to you. If you have a pension fund, and at our age, most of us do, part of it is almost certainly invested in U.S. markets. If you have RRSPs, your retirement savings, well, they're linked to global economic confidence. If you run a business or work for a company that exports or contracts with American firms, you are directly tied to what happens south of the border.
Yeah, the world runs on American economic confidence right now. When that confidence wobbles, investors pull back. Companies delay expansion, banks tighten lending, and ripples straight into your grocery bill, your mortgage renewal, and your retirement account.
And right now, that confidence is not just wobbling, it is cracking. Employers in the United States are not hiring because they do not know what the rules will be next month. Will there be tariffs? Will they be reversed? Will there be a new executive order? Will there be another war? Nobody can plan because nobody knows. And when businesses cannot plan, They do not move. They freeze.
And a frozen economy, even one that looks okay on the surface, is a dangerous economy. We learned that lesson in 2008. The housing market looked fine until the morning it didn't, right?
Right. Now, here is where the pressure on America gets even more serious. Because on top of all of this, on top of the frozen hiring, the collapse in confidence, the fear in the workforce, the United States just got hit by something it was not ready for.
Yeah. U.S. gasoline prices have climbed above $4 a gallon for the first time since 2022. And there are serious warnings from market analysts, not political commentators, that prices could hit $5 if the current disruption continues. That disruption is tied to rising tensions in the Middle East and the Iran war.
Now, if we want to be precise here, Iran and rising gas prices are not the cause of America's labor market problems. Those problems, heck, they were already there. Think of it like a pulled hamstring, though. The injury, it was already there. The athlete was already limping, but then someone came along and tripped them up.
But the impact is real because higher gas prices do not just cost more at the pump. They raise the price of everything that moves and gets made. Trucking, shipping, food distribution, manufacturing. When gas hits $4 or $5, the cost of living rises at exactly the moment when American workers are already afraid to quit their jobs, ask for a raise, and afraid to spend. That combination ends up being brutal.
And that puts the Federal Reserve in one of the most uncomfortable positions it has been in for years.
Now, the Federal Reserve, which is America's central bank, the equivalent of our Bank of Canada, has two jobs, basically. Keep inflation under control and keep employment strong. Right now, those two jobs are pulling in completely opposite directions.
If the Fed raises interest rates to fight inflation from those gas prices, well, it risks crushing an already weak labor market even further. If it cuts rates to boost hiring, well, it risks letting inflation run hot. It's like trying to squeeze toothpaste back into the tube with one hand while opening a new tube with the other. You can't do both, and the feds know it.
Remember the 1980s when Canadian mortgage rates hit 18, 19, 20%?
Luckily, I don't.
No, me either. Whew, that would have been awful. Because people, they were handing their house keys back to the bank. This was when generation of Canadians watched their savings evaporate. Now that happened because central banks lost control of inflation and had to slam the brakes. Nobody wants to go back to that.
Now compare that directly to the Bank of Canada. In March, the Bank of Canada held its policy rate at 2.25%. A calm, deliberate, measured decision. Predictable. Steady.
When a country's central bank is stable, businesses can make long-term plans. A company deciding where to put a factory, where to open a regional office, where to invest for the next 15 years, they need to know what borrowing costs are going to look like. They need a foundation. In Canada, they can have that conversation. In the United States right now, man, nobody can have that conversation. And that gap, that quiet, undramatic gap that nobody's talking about, is worth billions of dollars in investment.
So here's the proof that all of this talk is not theoretical.
Canada's exports to non-U.S. countries hit a record $22.3 billion in February. And the share of Canada's total exports going to the United States fell to just over 66%, the lowest share ever recorded.
For decades, Canada leaned on the United States. The U.S. was always the easy answer. Close, familiar, a known market with clear rules. And Canada prospered because of that relationship, I'm not going to lie. But easy relationships can become dependencies, and dependencies can become vulnerabilities.
What that record number tells us is that Canada is quietly, steadily building something new, and the rest of the world is quietly, steadily responding.
Now, let's go back to Pandora. They diverted that shipment from the U.S. and sent it to Canada. There wasn't a press conference, there wasn't any loud pomp and circumstance, no announcements, just business making a decision quietly. They were looking at the volatility south of the border and looking at the stability north of it. And they chose the steadier path up here in the Great White North.
And you know what? That quiet decision is being repeated by companies all over the world. Not every day, and certainly not with headlines, but consistently. One shipment here, one regional office there, one investment decision redirected. That is how the map changes. Not overnight, but one decision at a time. You know, when you're running a business that needs to survive for 15 years, you don't want a roller coaster. You want a foundation that you can build on that's nice and steady. You want to know your tax rate next year. You want to know your borrowing costs will be reasonable. You want to know the trade rules will not change overnight because some moron sent a tweet at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Dave, boring is beautiful.
I gotta put that on t-shirts.
Steady, Dave, is the new superpower. And Canada right now, well, we're the steadiest major economy on the planet, and that's not arrogance. That's just the data.
But here's our challenge to Canada's government. Being a stable option, well, it's not enough. You have to actively tell the world that you are.
The businesses that are quietly rerouting, well, they need to know that Canada is ready. They need trade offices that actually answer the phone. They need a regulatory environment that doesn't take 3 years to get a permit. They need to know that they can choose Canada and Canada will choose them right back and help them get what they need.
So the U.S. share of Canada's exports is falling. Record exports are going to the rest of the world. A major European company just chose Canada over America. The window is wide open. The U.S. labor market is freezing, the Federal Reserve is trapped, gas prices are rising, and the world, quietly without fanfare, has started to move towards Canada.
And Canada's $22.3 billion record is not a coincidence. It is the first chapter of something much larger. Whether it becomes the whole story depends on entirely what Canada does next.
So we want to know what you think and we want to hear from you. Do you believe that Canada will seize this moment or will we let it pass? And what is the one thing that Canada must do right now to lock in this advantage?
If this gave you a clearer picture of what's actually happening, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and click on the bell if you haven't already, because we put out new videos every single day.
And if you want to help support the channel, check out the links in the pinned comment down there because we have links to the merch store where you can get great stuff like this that helps support the channel, or join the A team, which helps us keep this channel independent. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Ciao for now.